Because when we take personal responsibility for our consciousness and the energy that we carry with us into every room and every being that we interact with, we really can change the world for the better.
I could just see how everyone in that restaurant was beautiful, like not physically, but internally. And I've never had that experience before. I'm like, wow, something's going on here.
Our own bodies are extremely sensitive to energy. In fact, women are typically better at this than men. If you walk into a place and you pay attention, you know what it feels like.
Mm.
Do you feel welcome? Do you feel scared, afraid, hesitant, confused?
And people find when they were walking into a store that just they're just more friendliness. It's like people, you're like blessing people as you're walking around. And people are energetically sensitive and they feel blessed and they turn to you and smile. And so you're kind of like a walking blessing when you take that with you. I feel at peace in my bubble no matter what's going on. And those stages are happening and there's some up and down, but we have this like trampoline that's kind of helping us and supporting us to come back
We
to
have
love.
all that information in the field. So not only, as Jeff said, you're getting a lot more energy and you're getting high consciousness, positive energy. You're also getting all these requests to divinity or prayers in the unconditional love or higher zone. So you got a lot more energy and a lot more lovingness with the information of a pilgrimage site. I came across this group of inventors who were trying to create a free energy device, and they didn't do that, but they stumbled on a way to focus life force energy. So recently, I've been calling consciousness fields the elusive obvious because they're around us all the time. We just don't typically talk to them as consciousness fields. We don't say, I'm going to go over to my grandmother's for Thanksgiving because I love the consciousness field.
Right, a really great welcome back, everyone, to the Live, Love, Learn podcast. And today we are exploring something that you can feel but rarely name, and that's the quality of the field that you live in. I mean, think of the difference between a quiet walk in nature or a peaceful, well kept home against a noisy, fluorescent lit room where people have just argued. One lifts you and the other drains you. And if you're in any doubt, if you've got dogs in your home, they'll certainly tell you the difference. And unfortunately, we're in a world with constant noise and manipulation. And we're filming this on a week where there's been an awful lot of turmoil going on in the world, a lot of shock for people. So learning to create and sustain a supportive high consciousness environment for ourselves and our loved ones has never mattered more than it does now. So I am absolutely delighted to be joined by two amazing new guests for the platform, Jeffrey Stegman and Clayton Stedman. And they are co-founders of an amazing company called Focus Life Force Energy, or FLFE for short. So this is going to be a practical but such informative talk today where we're going to be looking at high versus low fields. What does it mean and how do we measure them? How to raise the quality of your home or phone environment and what changes you'll actually notice with yourself but the wider world around you and everyone that you interact with. So I'm really hopeful that by the end of this episode, you're going to have simple steps to feel better, think clearer, steady your nervous system, and not to mention EMF protection. Because when we take personal responsibility for our consciousness and the energy that we carry with us into every room and every being that we interact with, we really can change the world for the better. So, gentlemen, thank you so much for joining me. It's such a pleasure. How are you both doing? Clayton, start with you.
Sure. Doing great. It's nice to talk to you again. I'm just appreciating your very articulate language. Yes, it's good to see you.
Thank you, Clayton. How are you, Jeff?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm good. It's beautiful time here or beautiful fall start to North America. So I'm really enjoying just being out in nature right now and really glad to be with you again
It's
after
just
our initial talk. Yeah.
Yeah, I just love it, and we've just been joined, and we've just left the wonderful moniker, and as we go
Mm.
through, we're going to see how your company is so different and really an inspiration in a world where there's so much focus on what's not going right, how we can shift that focus. And for me, it's been absolutely life changing. But we've got a lot of listeners that won't know particularly what we're talking about so far because it's the first time you gentlemen have been on my show. Although many people watching me also watch the wonderful Inspired channel, so they will have seen you on there possibly. But Jeffrey, let's start with you. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and what problem were you trying to solve with the start of this company, FLFE or Focused Life Force Energy?
Mm.
Mm.
Well, I've spent my life in business, in manufacturing business, kind of old school. And part of what I did there was creating environments, cultures. And that came, after years and years of maybe mastering some of the other aspects of business and working with Clayton, who was a coach for me in business as a spiritual path. So as I saw, what could really happen when the environment changes with a group of people trying to do something together in a business, there's always lots of buttons being pushed and stressors and things happening, and it's a great place to evolve. It's a great place to grow because you can see where you're triggered and you can move from there. But at some point, I became, um, maybe a little overwhelmed by traditional business and some of the baggage that comes with it. And when Clayton and I discovered the FLFE technology, we were using it to do um, service work. We were raising consciousness around the planet for 2012. And I got so much joy out of doing that kind of work. It's like totally quietly. No one knew we were doing it. Um, and there was just the feeling of, all right, we found this low spot. We found this town that Clayton knew about in the Arabian Peninsula where the main industry was curses. So
Wow.
if you wanted to curse someone, you would go to that town and pay your money and you would get a curse. Um, so we put the kind of the precursor of the FLFE on that. We were using Google Earth and zooming around. And then we saw the whole continent go up in consciousness using kinesiology or muscle testing to measure on Dr. David Hawkins' scale. So, in that process, I just became, wow, this is something I want to take further. How can we combine business and consciousness to bring something to the world that really would be helpful?
That's amazing, absolutely amazing. And I think, when you see that questioning opening mind and you're always looking to contribute, this is how such wonderful things come to be. Clayton, what was your
Mm.
journey? Tell us a little bit about your journey to FLFE and working with Jeffrey.
Well, after I got out of high school, I tried a couple of different things, and I ended up getting into the education business. I really enjoyed learning. It's a really big value of mine. And I worked for private schools for about 11 years, different ones and different roles. And I was very active in an Eastern-based philosophy. And as many philosophies and religions do, there was a big scandal. And many of us left, including me. And I went through a career planning process and got into this emerging profession called coaching back in the early 90s. And so I went to a couple of coaching schools and really took my education and philosophical background and created a specialty called business as a spiritual path, as Jeff said, because the focus of my life was spirituality. And Catherine, I thought that business had the most power in the world. I looked at like where can you make the most difference in the world with the least amount of effort. And I didn't know much about business, but I didn't think the arts had the most power. I didn't think Politics had the most power. I thought it was business. I could do the most good in the world. So I chose that specialty and developed a coaching practice. And I think it was 95. I got into coaching, and over the years, I developed experience and worked for, some pretty big organizations as a contractor. I came across Dr. David Hawkins' work in 2004. That was the book Power versus Force. One of those books where like six people tell you should read the book.
Yeah.
And then finally you read the book and they go, yeah, they were right. They knew me well. So I read that book and it really rocked my world. And I believe that we could measure some things through kinesiology accurately. And we're able to do some things really consistently. There's some things I don't know if I'll ever be able to do. I seem to have a block about certain things, but we've proven with validity that there's some things we can test really well. Like we're really good at testing the level of conscious of properties
Mm.
and people. And so I developed this. So once I figured out kinesiology could work, well, actually didn't figure it out then. I was hoping it would work, and I've created an assessment to measure people's consciousness in different parts of their life. Because the people that we're working with, if I could help them raise their consciousness, people like Jeff or people like you, I could help thousands of people, not just one person. And so I developed these assessments to measure people's consciousness at different parts of their life. And then it took me, about 5 years to really perfect it, refine it. I don't know if it's perfect, but it's good. It's good. And then I started testing the level of consciousness of intervention techniques. And eventually, one of my coach friends, Jim, he introduced me to Jeff. And Jeff and I are kind of gearheads. So I came across this group of inventors who were trying to create a free energy device, and they didn't do that, but they stumbled on a way to focus life force energy. And so I invited Jeff to come up and meet the one person who was still doing it. They did it for about 7 years, and two of the guys just ran out of money. The one guy was a retired millwright, tool and die maker, electrician, and probably two other things that I can't remember. And so we met him, and that was the precursor to FLFE. And we had some fantastic experiences at his place. We might, tell you one or two stories if you want. And yeah, and then 2011 came up, and we knew we could help lift the level of consciousness of places. So we would go on Google Earth, as Jeff said. We'd find the lowest part of a continent. It could be an old battlefield or a prison or someplace like that. And we have to work with the law of non-interference, but we could put a version of FLFE on that place, and it would lift that area up. And if anybody's ever gone onto an old battlefield or on a tour through an old prison site,
Yeah.
you feel that heaviness, and so it's pretty self-evident when we started finding the places. You look at the history, and it's like, wow, yeah, this one place is known for putting curses. That's their main industry, which is really weird, but that's what it is. And old battlefields, concentration camps. Yeah, and as Jeff said, the whole area around it would go up, and it would actually affect a lot of people. And it's like, wow, this is amazing. We could do so much good for the world. And so one day I think we were doing this for about a year. And it was just after December 21st, 2012, when the Mayan calendar shifted, and we were all wondering what was going to happen, of course. And we kind of just rested for a while because every day there was like, 2 hours before work, we were getting up and doing this, this testing and
Yeah.
service work. And it was like a couple weeks after, we were kind of just sitting there, and we pray, before we start a meeting. And we were just like, okay, what do we do now? And well, for me anyway, one of the questions I like to ask is, what is your will for me, God? What would you have me do? And I'd wanted to be a bit more service, and I felt like I was in my own way. So when I heard the message, go into business with Jeff and do FLFE, we started having a conversation. And it's not like we were obligated to do it, but it was the answer to a prayer. It was a prayer for about 5 or 6 years because I wanted to do more, more for the human family.
That's amazing. Both of all, I haven't heard it in that much detail. It's absolutely wonderful to hear how these incredible partnerships come into being. And you brought the sun out to me. The sun's coming through my window.
Yes.
In. So just as you were talking, the sun, it's been raining and you brought the sun out. So so many things just with what you both said there that I want to ask about. I mean, you talk about this life force energy. The company's called Focus Life Force Energy. What exactly do you mean for that? I think most people watching here or listening understands that we are all energy. We hear that all the time. Life is energy. But when you're talking about focus life force energy and you mentioned the Hawkins scale of consciousness, how do they link together and what does that mean in practical terms for people? And we'll start with you, Clayton, on that one.
Focus life force energy. Well, in the Eastern traditions, Chinese medicine, Ayurveda, they will talk about life force energy as prana or
Mm.
chi. And so it's the energy of existence, you could say. Um, it is in the air and other things, but it definitely is in the air, and it's part of what animates our life. In fact, I think one of the foundations of the yogic philosophy is doing breathing exercises to get more life force or prana or chi into your body so that you can become, we'll say, more energized and use that to elevate yourself or raise your consciousness. So that would be a working definition, a practical definition of life force energy. Uh, most people find really well-grown food, whether it's organic or biodynamic, it tastes differently. You're more satiated. You have your body works better. So that's an example of life force energy in a food. And what the technology does, it's a FLFE system, and it's about 7 technologies now. We keep adding more technologies to it, and it has a way of extracting life force energy from the air. Some people call it ether or aether, and we focus that through consciousness technology into a spot that is a very high consciousness field, and uh, that's how we gather it to use it. And I'll maybe let Jeff finish up that story, but I'll take us that far.
Fantastic. Take us away, Jeff.
Yeah, so in that very highly charged high consciousness space, that is the result of the what we call the output stack of the system. So you've input stacks gathering this life force energy and then this one output. And beneath that, when I first went into the inventor space, Clayton invited me to put my hand in that space and feel it, and I stepped forward and did that, and it was very tingly, very, very intense. And walking into that inventor space for the first time, that was my first experience of a high consciousness field. I had felt low consciousness fields, like being in a cemetery or a prison, as we talked about, battlefield. And walking in there was very energizing. I felt like I had so much more personal energy, felt very alive and sharp in my cognitive, and I even had like a enlightenment type experience when we walked down the street to the restaurant down at the corner, and I could just see how everyone in that restaurant was beautiful, like not physically but internally, and I've never had that experience before. I'm like, wow, something's going on here, that's really amazing. So that high consciousness space that I put my hand into, and that's now part of a much evolved FLFE system, is a quantum space. There's a quantum field in that space, and the reason we know that is because if you put a unique identifier for something into that field, like just slide it right into that space, a field activates whatever's identified. Might be a picture of a house, an address with FLFE. It would be an address, coordinates, a cell phone number, and a jurisdiction. That there's instantly a connection in a field. activates a consciousness field. So and we can go more into that. I mean, we humans do this all the time. If you ever had Reiki at a distance, the practitioner needs to identify you. They need to have a photo or address and a name in order to send the Reiki, in order to activate the field and have the Reiki treatment be around you. And if we think of someone get a phone call, it's the same thing happening. They are thinking of us while they're dialing. I mean, they have the unique identifier in front of them, the phone number, and a picture maybe of us in their mind. Boom, that field is activated around them and around us, and we think of them because we're now connected. So FLFE works very, very much in the same way. So we're talking about life force energy here, focused life force energy in this space. So consciousness, the way we measure consciousness on the Hawkins map, Dr. David Hawkins, as Clayton said, each point upwards is 10 times more energy. Right. So there's 10 times more life force available there. So it's an exponential climb there. So as a consciousness field that we activate using this system with the unique identifier is there, we're also specifying the level of consciousness of it. And that's unconditional love. And so depending on where that property was before, it's each point upwards 10 times more, 10 times more, yeah. 10 times 10 times 10 times 10. So you get 10, say it's 150 points higher, it's 10 to the 150th power. It's 10 times 10, 150 times more life force energy. And that's really the kind of the first big benefit of being in a high consciousness field is just so much more energy that the body uses, takes up and runs with.
And I've noticed that so much. I mean, I'll come on to some of my personal experience in a bit, but I noticed that so much as soon as it was switched on. I mean, we're in a world where people are bombarded by all sorts of different types of energy. What do you think in terms of some of the things that people that are listening to that they might not realize that are actually lowering their energy field? Can you give us some examples of that, Clayton?
Yes, well, I just thought I'd mention before I forget that your home actually started off in the top 1% of all homes in
Wow.
terms of consciousness. So, um,
That's all the
good for
cats.
you. That's all
I
the
think that's all,
cats
it's all the animals we've got
and
here.
the horses.
Honestly,
Yeah.
I literally feel like Snow White when I go out here because it's not just our animals that we've brought into our lives, it's also all the wildlife. It's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, so for people who have a really high place like yours, sometimes it does take a bit longer because things are already in the love zone. So I just thought I'd mention that. Um, yeah. So recently I've been calling consciousness fields the elusive obvious because they're around us all the time. We just don't typically talk to them as consciousness fields. We don't say, I'm going to go over to my grandmother's for Thanksgiving because I love the consciousness field. You
Yes.
know, I'm going over because I like being at grandma's place. I like hanging out with my relatives. As long as Uncle Ron doesn't come, everything's going to be great, right?
Yeah. We all know that
So
feeling.
we
Yeah.
all know that, yeah. So it's kind of the elusive obvious. They're everywhere, and the technology of kinesiology, consciousness kinesiology, is just one of the ways of measuring them. Our own bodies are extremely sensitive to energy. In fact, women are typically better at this than men. If you walk into a place and you pay attention, you know what it feels like.
Mm.
Do you feel welcome? Do you feel scared, afraid, hesitant, confused? Um, so it's funny having a conversation about something that once you get into it, people really go, "Oh yeah, consciousness fields, of course, right?" So yeah, if you go to an old, a prison, an old prison site, hopefully the prison's closed when you visit. If you go to
Yeah.
an old battlefield, some cemeteries are really low. Some spots seem to be good on cemeteries if they're there to express their gratitude for the person who's passed and share their love. then it seems to be pretty good. But if the people are still in grief, which is understandable, then it tends to be low. Grief is pretty heavy.
Mm.
So we're walking around in them all the time. And FLFE is like a pilgrimage site, really. It's like Lourdes, Machu Picchu, Stonehenge. It's kind of in those ranges as an average, the unconditional love zone. And there might be areas on those sites that have really specifically high areas. But
Yeah.
in general, that's kind of the average. That's right in that unconditional love or 550 on the Hawkins map area. And when you get into these pilgrimage sites, they have these particular types of focuses. So Lourdes is known for healing, physical healing, and oftentimes through water, drinking the water. And so sometimes it's hard to know if it's chicken or the egg. Did people go there? People typically, a pilgrimage site becomes a pilgrimage site typically because of a miracle,
Mm.
so-called miracle, a non-linear phenomena. And the people go back and they start connecting with the divine. They usually ask for help or they offer prayers, and it builds up an energy field, and we call that information in the field. So the information in the field of Lourdes would be a focus on blessing the water, receiving a blessing from the water, blessing the area so that others may receive healing, perhaps asking for healing, connecting with the divine, making a request for help, offering help. And then you have institutions like, religions and churches that get involved and they organize it. And most of them do a pretty good job, of organizing those places, letting people have access and maintaining it so it doesn't get overrun. Um, and so it creates a certain type of experience that people are most likely to have.
Yeah.
In India, they have temples that are just for fertility,
Yeah.
just for having children, just for having a healthy crop, starting a business, having a profitable, there's so many temples. It's a different type of tech. It's a consciousness technology as well. We don't have that as much in the West, or we don't talk about it as much, but there's many native sites where they would go for, like a rain dance, or they would
Yeah.
go for prepare for moving their, because they usually move 3 or 4 times a year, right? Before agriculture came in. And in the local area here, they would move about 4 or 5 times a year. And they'd always do a ceremony before they left. They'd bless the land and they'd ask for their ancestors to make their journey safe. And so that's information in the field. And we do that in FLFE. We make these requests to divinity. We make prayers for things like having humans respect animals, having fathers respect mothers, mothers respect fathers, the sacred feminine respect the sacred masculine respect the sacred feminine. Sons respect fathers, sons respect mothers, like all these prayers that you would want for yourself or anybody. We've found a way to write out that request to divinity and measure it through kinesiology. And we have all that information in the field. So not only, as Jeff said, you're getting a lot more energy and you're getting high consciousness, positive energy. You're also getting all these requests to divinity or prayers in the unconditional love or higher zone. So you got a lot more energy and a lot more lovingness with the information of a pilgrimage site.
Amazing. It is amazing. And I know I'm going to go, anyone who's watching this, you're going to find out very soon. We'll come on to how you can experience it. So, Jeffrey, in terms of how people can experience this themselves, you've got different options for people. So you can have a property on there, you can have a phone on there, you can have an object on there, a business. Can you talk us through what the different options are? And if someone's watching this and they want to experience it themselves, what are their options?
Sure. Well, from the very beginning, we had the ethic of a no credit card free trial because we all know what it's like when we put a credit card in on a free trial and it doesn't become free. In fact, we might have to pay 2 or 3 months before we can actually cancel it because it's hard to cancel.
Yeah.
So we did away with all that. So that credit card free trial, no cost, is a way for people to try and experience the service. And what we're doing now, this is fairly recent, is both the home and the phone at the same time.
That's brilliant.
So the home service goes right out to the property boundaries. So in many countries, there's very regulated address systems where you go to the courthouse and you find the drawings and you know exactly where the boundaries are. Everything's staked out and coordinates and so forth. So FLV is referencing that. So it's opening the consciousness field right to the boundaries because that address is very well defined, you could say.
Yeah.
Now, in some countries, we had to do something different. We asked people to take a photograph inside the building, the house, that then identifies that space and that contiguous space that you have available to you that you could walk through, that you live in. So those are both the home service. And what's really amazing about the home service is, first of all, the clearing that happens. So it's clearing the negative history or the trauma on the land or in the building. Just as we've been talking about, these low consciousness fields exist, in different places depending on what happened with the humans there. Somebody could have had a tough death or a divorce or suicide in the place that you're now living in. So that consciousness field is still there. It's held in the crystalline structure of the ground, the rock, the drywall, the concrete block. And you may move into a space and get depressed and think, well, it's me, something's wrong with me.
Yeah.
But it's the consciousness field that's there. So FLFE is clearing that first. And what we found in the very beginning, before we did that, we just put the service on, and it took quite a while to come up. It might take from a few days to a week to actually come up to the level of consciousness that we expected. Once we cleared first, then it goes right up within seconds. So this clearing is happening all the time, very quickly. And the home property and the business also has these characteristics, business service, is geopathic stress mitigation, because we have underground streams, above ground streams and rivers, traffic patterns with cars, all sorts of things can affect the energy of a property. And there are places that the natives wouldn't live on because they knew it was not life
True.
supporting, it was
Yeah.
life subtracting. So we don't generally know about that, and people live in towns, so it's not healthy to be in. So we're mitigating that through the information in the field and very specific instructions in the field to put additional energy into the space to compensate for these things when they show up. And then the everywhere or the moving option is the phone and objects. And in that case, there's a bubble around the phone or the object. And within 9 feet of that object or phone is where is the highest consciousness section. And that's where the EMF mitigation is there. The highest level of support is there. And then but the field goes out to 300 feet from the object or phone.
That was incredible. I was reading about
Yeah.
it yesterday. That's so, so useful.
Yeah, and people find when they are walking into a store that they're just more friendliness. It's like you're like blessing people as you're walking around. And people are energetically sensitive and they feel blessed and they turn to you and smile. And so you're kind of like a walking blessing when you take that with you. And then you've also got that EMF protection or mitigation happening. And of course, the home and the business, the stationary also has that. And it's built in to the bubble that's for the entire property. And it's starting to mitigate things as they come in from outside and sources within, like a
Wonderful.
Wi-Fi router and things like that.
That's one of the biggest questions I've got from people actually, because I've had a lot of friends and colleagues on the trial, and all the experiences, apart from one which we'll come on to, have been positive, and the other one wasn't not positive, just needed a bit of extra support. I mean, one of the questions I had before we move on, a really important one from one of my friends who tried it, and they loved the free trial, but they said moving forward, whether to get the subscription on the phone or the house on both. If you're living in a house where you share the space with other people who might not be on the same wavelength as you, so we don't want to call it, sort of a hierarchical better, worse or anything. But the question I had from my friend was, if he does the FLFE on his house and he's got what are quite sort of negative personality people living in the house there, is that a problem? He doesn't want to manifest, he doesn't want their energy manifesting bad things in this consciousness field. Does that make sense, Clayton?
Yes. Well, there's also a law of non-interference in the spiritual realm. And so we don't have the right, we have the authority as a co-creator with the divine to support others to live their best life. And there's a line there where, it's interference. And so the line for FLFE is as long as somebody in the house knows the service is on,
Mm-hmm.
and they just remind people to hydrate properly. So what happens in a high consciousness field, your body has all this extra energy, all this extra unconditional, love, this EMF mitigation, which is really, some people just buy it for that. Your body, it's like doing a renovation in your kitchen, right? And let's say you have like $500 a week to do a renovation. It's going to take a long time. But if you have like $50,000 a week, you can get a pretty nice kitchen in a month, right? You can get a house for that in some parts of the world. So having all this extra energy, the body goes, it has an innate intelligence to heal and self-regulate. So it'll start doing all these healing processes. And we need we need a sufficient amount of water to help the body flush out the toxins. And as a society, we tend to be chronically dehydrated. It's just the way society is today. So as long as somebody is reminding them of to hydrate occasionally, and if you're in a place of business, just put up a poster that says, remember how something about hydration. That then you're clear of your spiritual interference obligation, right? Because a lot of people, they will put the service on. They won't tell anybody else in the house. They'll remind them of the hydration, and they'll just watch people because it's kind of like a placebo, right?
Yeah.
A placebo is stick. Wow, they don't know what's on. My plants are doing better. My animals get along, and these people they're kind of changing. I got friends coming over. They're wanting to hang out, and stay more. In fact, we've had a few complaints about, my grocery bill's gone up because my friends come over and eat all my groceries. They don't go home, So it's one of the few complaints we get. It's mostly a joke, but so all these things start happening in the home that are a placebo effect. And so it's a way for people to be a consciousness researcher on their own, in their own way. So he's not doing any harm. It very likely will help the people. And if he's, mentioning hydration once in a while, that's all he needs to do from our understanding of the law of non-interference. And the last part about, the home and the phone, we find that if you're in if you can manage it financially, if you're in the environment, the high conscious field 24/7, it's much easier for the body to adapt than being in a high field and being kind of in a low field. High field, low field. It's like on and off, or turning it up, turning it down. It seems to take a lot more energy to acclimatize to the changes.
Yeah.
So if you can manage both, then yeah, that's where you get the best benefit.
Absolutely love it. I mean, I just want to share a couple of things that I've noticed, and I'm laughing because it's all funny. So, the first thing I noticed when it was switched on, and was that I'm very lucky. I've got my rescue horses down at the bottom of the garden, and then I rent the field next door so they can go between the two. And the horses wouldn't go out of our property. They were just like stuck, and they could feel the difference between that field that was in our boundary, covered by the FLFE, and the other one. So that was quite amusing. And then the other thing is I bought a sprouting kit to sprout some greens, which I often do. But I got these new sprouts, and the instructions said, they'd grow in sort of 7 to 10 days. And after 3 days, they were huge. And I sent it. It was a little family business, so I sent her a picture, and she was like, "We have never seen this. What have you done?" And they just grew so quickly. And then the final thing, which was really, really funny, was that I had a family member say to me, they were going through a bit of a stressful time and they were needing my help for something. And they said to me, they didn't know about the FLFE, but I was in their house and I had the Anywhere with me on my phone.
Mm.
And they were like, "Why are you so relaxed? Why are you not getting stressed by all this? It's awful. Why are you not getting stressed?" Because normally I probably would have. I've got a naturally quite worrying, stressy personality. And I was just laughing because I thought, I can't say to them I'm in a high consciousness field. They'd have thought I was completely lost the plot. But they'll probably watch this and then they'll know why I wasn't getting stressed. I've had so many examples. One last one is I went into this. We've got this really lovely local shop near us where they do all lovely plastic trees. You take your containers in and refill those, and it's called For Earth's Sake, and it's just really wonderful organic food and everything. And when I went in there, like everyone, every shop I go into, people start talking to me, and this woman gave me a whole tour of her whole premises and the area she was developing and her cat. So that's just happened so many times to me. It's just been absolutely wonderful. I mean, Jeffrey, what other things can people expect when they go for this 15-day trial? Because I can't stress enough to people, you do not put your credit card in. The trial is completely free. There are no catches, although
Mm.
you will get an email that might go to your spam. So check for that when you sign up. But what other feedback can people expect, Jeffrey?
Well, what we see regularly is, and this is confirmed in the research that we've done on EMF sensitive people, and it appears that everybody is somewhat on that sensitivity
Yeah.
range, right? Better sleep. For some people, it's the best sleep they've had in a long time. And we'll get to kind of the flip side of that it happens very rarely. Um, Less brain fog, more mental stamina, and more faster recovery from mental effort. We hear about that a lot, and that showed up in the research multiple times. We did confirming studies with different groups of people, and anxiety reducing. That's a big
Mm.
one.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so why is anxiety so prevalent right now? And it could be that it's these very kind of jagged EMF inputs of things turning on and off around us all the time. So anxiety reducing is a big one. Um, we had a woman call in last night during a webinar. Um, she had the free trial on, and she was actually doing a boost, which is a higher consciousness level that you can do with the control panel, which is why you want to see your email, because you want to log in on that control panel and play with it. Um, Her 18-year-old son started organizing and cleaning part of the house. He'd never done that before.
I
She
love
comes
it.
down, he's like, "Look, Mom, I've got this whole part of the house done." Um, so and we hear that over and over again, that people in the environment who don't know anything about it take like a different level of care for the space and for themselves. So that really works well with contractors too, by the way. If you have contractors in your house, put the service on. Um, the other, um, what is the other thing that she mentioned, Clayton? It was, I can't think of it right in this moment, but
Yeah.
yeah, there's sleep is a biggie. And what can happen? So some places, like we said, are low energy, low life force energy places, low consciousness. Like at the end, Rivertown, where if the river's heading toward the town and then it takes a turn, the chi of the river can continue through, and it kind of strips away the life force energy, the consciousness, and it makes for a low energy place. So if someone lived in a place like that, and then suddenly they're at unconditional love level, then it's a big gap. And we're all using our energies, for the most part, we're higher consciousness than the space we're in. In that case, you were really big gap. And so you're giving away your own energy. You're using your own energy to compensate for the space around you, for
Mm.
that low consciousness field around you, or even just a medium consciousness field around you. And healers particularly find that it really helps them to kind of recharge the tank or not have, their energy drop during a reading. So that's what a really important aspect that people may notice is they have more personal energy. They're not so tired.
Yeah.
In the afternoon, they don't need that cup of coffee. They're just like go go. Um, but those people who are in a really low spot and now it's high, they may get so energized that they have trouble going to sleep.
Yeah.
And that's another reason to open that email is you have a slider that you can turn down the consciousness level and acclimate and kind of just bring it up gradually. I remembered what the other thing Alicia said. So this is a woman with four kids, four young kids, single mom, and last year her support system, like her mothers, grandmothers, I don't know if it was a sister too, she
Mhm.
said, they all passed away.
Oh, wow. Wow.
So she said, she was really worried to not have that supporting love, that supporting um, unconditional love from those family members for the kids. And she said when she went on the service, it took care of that. Like that feeling of love was there for her kids. And that was the most amazing thing for her.
That's absolutely beautiful because it's so awful when that does happen to someone.
Mhm.
Clayton, we were talking before we started, and I think it would fit really well here. There's been an awful lot going on in the consciousness field globally, particularly this week, but in general. And you were talking about the 5 stages of shock. Can you just fill us in a little bit about that and how relevant and how the FLFE can help with this?
Yeah, well, if anybody's listening to this, they know what happened in the US with Charlie Kirk. And it seems like I don't know, the people I know in Canada are kind of in shock, and certainly in the US media, it's everywhere. And the way that the way that we're so connected today, it kind of goes around the planet. And
Yeah.
so we thought it would be good today just to talk about what is in the world and then how, we can manage that. So the first stage of shock is denial. It's like we just can't believe it happened. Just it's kind of that like numbness where, why? Like what caused this? And then, shortly after that's anger, right? Like, and then we start sort of, there's an unconscious part of it that starts trying to figure it out. And it's like, well, I wonder if this had happened and this could have been different, or if that happened and this could have been different. And they call that bargaining in this process. So you have shock, anger, and then bargaining. And then you start wondering, well, did it need to happen? And then that's all that bargaining, sort of going back and forth, back and forth. And then there comes a sadness when the reality sinks in. That stage is called depression. And then the last is we finally come to acceptance. But acceptance might take, that might take years.
Mm.
And it doesn't, the stages, there's no obligation for the stages to be complete. Some people, and I was part of that Eastern-based religion that I talked about for 11 years, and there was a big scandal. I don't think some of those people ever got over it.
Mm.
They got stuck in depression or anger, and they're still there. And yeah, I was out for a walk with somebody. I won't mention his name. Not too long ago, I was in a long-term relationship, and we were just out for a walk, and he'd just gotten divorced after many years. And after talking to him for 20 minutes, I was like depressed just talking to him. He had an encyclopedic knowledge of all the things wrong with Canada. And there's a lot wrong with
Yeah.
Canada. It was like a walking encyclopedia, dates, times, names. It was like, and my conclusion when I left the conversation, I like the guy, he's a very intelligent guy, he's a good man, is that the person he was with for all those years probably just had enough of being with the smart, angry guy who
That's
wants to be with someone who's constantly regurgitating all the negativity. And, I don't have no way of knowing that's the truth, but that's what I think is the truth. And it seems like I'm meeting more and more people like that. And I have to watch that in myself. If I don't keep focused on, being grateful for what I have and the good things in the world, then I can get cynical. And so in terms of how do we manage what's going on in the world, I would say understand the stages of grief. Um, Recently there is a whole conversation about consciousness nutrition. I don't know if we have time for that one today. That might have to go on the next conversation. But we were joking a couple weeks ago about something called vitamin G, the most important vitamin, and that's the vitamin of gratitude. And
love that.
if you can stay grateful, there's stuff to be grateful for. If you're breathing, there's hope. There's hope for your life. And the world has, I think, become a much more positive place in the last generation. I know how my grandparents lived. Like kind of a hard scrabble farm, dirt floors.
Yeah.
It's just how life was a couple generations ago, and we've come so far as a human race. So I would say focus on gratitude. I find making lists sometimes really help me. By the time I get down to 10, I'm out of the doing it out of obligation and kind of enjoying it phase. It takes me about 10,
Yeah.
sometimes a little longer, sometimes a little less. And then, I don't know, do something nice for yourself. I'm not talking about having an extra drink, you know, talking about, yeah, I really enjoy walking. I'm going to make sure I get out for a walk today. People call it self-care, that's the technical term in the psychology field or coaching field. But I would say just do something kind for yourself, and a little easier to be kinder for others when you're in that headspace for your own sovereignty. And if you want to get really radical, you could do something kind for another person,
Or another being.
another being. Yes, of course. Well, you
Yeah.
have the animal connection. Yeah, yeah.
I think that's so important what you just said there, because there's so many people. I think virtually everyone watching this will be going through that to some extent, and there can be that feeling of helplessness, and understanding that process and where you're at, and understanding that you don't have to be stuck there. And I love what you were saying, just bringing into what you were saying earlier, Jeffrey, about how so many people, their energy field isn't replenished enough, so it's constantly being drained, and that's one of the biggest things I've noticed since being on the FLFE. And I have to be completely transparent. I absolutely love the Inspired channel, and I love Jean Nolan and his team, and I'd heard him speaking about FLFE for ages, but I was at a stage in my journey where I'd got to the stage where I didn't trust anything.
Mhm.
You go for the stuff where you can be very trusty and open. And I've got a big corporate background in risk management. And then I was like, well, I don't trust anything. I don't. And then you have to experience it yourself. And having got to know both of you and your amazing team, I mean, anyone who interacts with FLFE, if you sign up for the 15-day trial, and I can't even imagine why anyone wouldn't want to experience this, you will get an email that will give you login control to your back office. You've got control. So as Jeffrey mentioned, there's a sliding scale that you can put up and down to, suit your speed of progress. There's boosting functions, which are amazing. I've used those before for
Mhm.
important meetings or important conversations. And also, it will connect you with someone from the office. So if you've got questions, if you need help, if you're experiencing things, you can connect in, and they're so helpful. And the one thing we can promise you is there's no pushing at all or salesy approach. Have you got anything to add to that at all, Jeffrey?
Yeah, I would highly recommend calling in and talking to someone in the office and experiencing that. And it's our pledge to have a receptionist, to have someone answering the phone, and to have as long of hours as we can manage. And we're now at least 10 hours a day, 6 days a week, so through Saturday. So that's, it's another of the ethics that we started with, we want a person there for you to talk to, not an AI bot. And we may, who knows, someday use some of those things to help you connect to a person,
Yeah.
but it's always the
Hmm.
person that you're going to be talking to. And I would mention, just going back to the conversation too, that since 2020, we hear from our customers, and I experience it, that being in the bubble, as we affectionately refer to FLFE, is in that unconditional love zone. Yeah, there's things happening outside.
Mm.
And when, like when I connect to, say, a media outlet and there's a video of something horrific, it's like, it's so shockingly different than the environment I'm in all the time. I just don't want it anymore. I just won't
Yeah.
watch them. I just don't. It's like, no, I don't. My peace is worth way more. Um, so that what people have said to us since 2020, particularly since there's been so much happening, is, yeah, I feel at peace in my bubble no matter what's going on. And those stages are happening, and there's some up and down, but we have this like trampoline that's kind of helping us and supporting us to come back to love. And that it's just been invaluable for me in my own life.
It's so important. And, we carry our energy with us. And a lot of the conversations I hear, and actually it's wonderful to hear people having these conversations, is how can I help more? How can I do more? And most philosophical and spiritual teachings teach us that you have to fill up your own cup first, and people can be really struggle with that concept, particularly people that are real empaths. So carrying this high consciousness bubble with you, what would you like to say to people, Clayton, about how when they take that journey themselves, how they are literally changing the world when they're doing that?
Well, I should say that we have a boost on right now. We haven't mentioned that yet. We have a 700 level of consciousness boost. If you can hear the webinar, you will have the benefit of that to help you. Um, there is a concept in philosophical dissertations and different philosophies, as well as consciousness kinesiology. There's a principle called the consciousness compensation factor. And so there's a mathematical sort of equation for that. De- Depending on the level of consciousness of the planet, because humans are connected to all other humans in some way,
Mm.
right? And it's like a candle in a dark room. You may not be able to see the whole room, but you can get around the room. You can carry the candle with you and you can have enough light to make sure you don't trip over the furniture or bump into something. And so when you're at a high level of consciousness, let's say you're at 500s on on the Hawkins map, right now, because the world's a little bit lower than it has been even a week ago because of the shock that many people are experiencing. One person at 500 on the Hawkins scale of consciousness counterbalances for about 750,000 people below 200.
Wow.
So, we all sometimes wonder, does our life have meaning? Are we living a great life, living our best life? But even any person, a janitor, a farmer, a business person, a housewife, husband. I believe it's possible for just about anybody to be a loving person. And you don't have to be a celebrity or a big business person or some media person to make a great contribution to humanity. You can just be, and if you can get up to 550 on the Hawkins map at unconditional love, then you're counterbalancing for over 1 million people. You're helping all those members of the human family that you might not ever know. And when we talk about doing, something for somebody else, oftentimes an anonymous act of giving it can almost be selfish because it can fill your heart so much.
Mm.
And so if you just think about, take a few minutes once in a while and think about your human family and all those people are suffering and just, send out a prayer and ask that they find peace. Uh, you know, that that's worth doing. That matters.
Absolutely. Anything else you'd like to say on that, Jeffrey?
Mm, Clayton said it very well. I think just that, and it radiates throughout all of humanity and really all of creation. Um, and it's those small, kindly interactions, holding the door for someone, smiling, and that comes so naturally when you're in that loving state, that can really make a difference for someone. I know it does for me when you get someone holds the door and gives you a smile. Um, it's that connection, that oneness between us all, that we're all the same, no matter what they look like, um, that we can do when we're in that state of love, in that smaller orbit of just people that we're interacting with, just naturally.
I couldn't agree more, and I have found myself a lot more tolerant of other people since I've been experiencing the FLFE. And I have to be honest. There's times when I sort of want to retreat from people, because we've been taught so much about the negative side of people. But actually, when it's so true, I love the Wayne Dyer quote, when you change the way you look at things, or the things you look at change. And this experience of the FLFE, when you change your bubble that you're in and you're taking with you, I cannot emphasize enough to people how much you're going to notice about how that impacts other living things, whether they're people, other living creatures, plants. There's so much more I could go through with both of you. I'm going to have to ask you back to cover more details. I don't want to make it too long for people, but as Clayton said, and anyone who's been listening to this podcast, we have been the FLFE has been broadcasting a high consciousness field, and anyone who can hear this, even part of it, will have had the benefit of that. I want to really encourage people. There's going to be a link below and in the comments for people to sign up for a completely free trial for 15 days, no catches at all. We want people to experience it themselves in a time when, there's so much that people are being told they have to do. One of the things that appealed to me so much about this is the fact that, look, all you've actually got to do is click on a button and sign up for the free trial and experience. What else do I need to tell people, Clayton, about the free trial and why they should experience this for themselves?
I would say be prepared to be surprised. It's There's a concept in personal development or spiritual training where you're especially as we get a little bit older, we recognize we're at a stage of development, right? It's pretty obvious. We're kind of at this level, and a high consciousness field could be the thing that takes you to that next level in your life, and that's an exciting thing to experience. Is that you've been working on yourself for a long time, but you've probably been compensating for your environment. You've probably been giving up your energy. And when the environment starts giving you energy, oftentimes people are able to go to the next level in their life and, better relationships, you know, improved health. We don't make, health claims, but we do have extraordinary evidence on our evidence page. We haven't even talked about, I think we have 13 white papers. We have a full-time doctor on staff to help us
Mm.
gather information from customers and refine the service. And we have Dr. Gary Schwartz, who is an icon in this industry, who is a graduate of Harvard, or Yale, I think Yale first and then Harvard, and then he finished his career at the University of Arizona. I keep getting the name of the department wrong. I think it was the Consciousness Research Department. But we have extraordinary levels of evidence on a statistically valid basis. So we're very well grounded in the practical realities of life, and we're mostly excited about helping raise the conscious of the planet. And a lot of people say, well, why don't you just give it away for free? Well, we have like 50 people on the team at FLFE. We have a lot of staff, and people need to make a living.
Yep.
And we're open to angel investors, giving us money. We'll consider that. But business can be a spiritual path, and being a business and charging something, charging a reasonable fee for a service and making a profit isn't it's not a negative thing.
Absolutely.
We don't know any better way to do it.
It's incredibly reasonable, and it is an energy exchange. And I honestly think this is the missing link and what so many people are missing now. And I have experienced it firsthand for myself. And honestly, I could spend over an hour just telling people about my experiences. And I'm very open to that if anyone wants to connect with me and find out a bit more. Jeffrey, one of the things that I really wanted to mention, as a mum myself, and I've been through this, and I've got some friends going through this quite a lot of people, their children are going off to university or college, as you said, and they say in America, and they're going to be away from the home environment, surrounded by an awful lot of EMF and a lot of changes in their consciousness field. For me, this is the perfect parting gift for your children. How would that work if people are in shared flats and things like that, Jeffrey?
Well, the phone is a great way to
Yeah.
do it. And what we've done is we have a lower cost phone add-on subscription. So once you've subscribed for a home or regular phone, you can add on a lower cost version, and it's slightly lower in consciousness, but it has all the other benefits, including EMF mitigation. It's still at Love. It's at 500 rather than 550.
Brilliant.
So that's a great thing since kids are so tied to their phones. The phones are right there all the time. So why not put the bubble there? And so that's something they can do. You can also put it, as long as the kids know, and if it's a shared space and they can, they're mature enough to suggest hydration and make sure there's water. Like it's like always having a gallon of spring water, with a spigot in the room,
Yeah.
Just having a good water available is really enough there. So, and it's super easy to change addresses. So for kids moving, they move into the next place, you change the address just right on again, you open the email, you can do it right there. You can change the address. And if you go on vacation, you can put your vacation home on the service while you're there and then change it back to your home when you get back. So, yeah, I mean, I think for the kids, the phone is probably one of the best because
Yeah.
there's so many EMFs in the classroom now, that it's really good for them to have that with them.
I think it's perfect, and I have got that both for my children, and they are very, very grateful and have some amazing stories of themselves as well. And for me as a mum, it gives me such peace of mind to be able to have that for them. So thank you both so, so much for that. I have got another whole pages of questions, but I want to keep it, not too overwhelming for people at this stage. So thank you both so much for your time. Clayton, is there anything else that I haven't asked you about today that you really wanted to cover?
Well, I don't think that's our last conversation.
No, I
I
hope
just
not.
I just wanted to thank you for welcoming us into your community. The way that we found it's best to share FLFE is through people who we consider spiritual leaders who are, in their own way helping the world. And just want to thank you for welcoming us into your community.
Thank you so much. And honestly, the community is just absolutely amazing.
Mm.
Jeffrey, what about you? Any other things that you'd like to finish off with?
Well, I would welcome anyone that tries a free trial into the FLFE community. And because FLFE can be a tongue twister, some people call it fluffy.
Oh, fluffy, I love.
Regina Meredith started that one. that we have webinars often, and Clayton and I are on, and we answer questions through the entire one. I think we were 2.5 hours yesterday or something.
Yeah.
And so we're available in that way, and it's really good to hear other people share their experiences and ask questions about what's going on for you. So that's part of being in the FLFE community. And there's also a FLFE space, which is a meeting space, a virtual meeting space that was open source and we customized. It's highly private and secure. So that's there for people to interact. And we still have a Facebook page only for people in the community that will eventually move over to FLFE space. But that's another way to be in the community, as well as calling the office and talking to people there.
Thank you so much. And thank you so much for anyone to listen. If there's one thing that you can do today, try this. You know, we all want to make the world a better space for ourselves, for every living being on it. And this is one way that you can really, really speed up making a difference. And if you need help and questions, all the links will be below. Connect in. Try it for yourself. You know, don't believe what we're saying. Have that experience yourself. And as Clayton says, be prepared to be amazed. Thank you so much, both of you. It's such a pleasure. I honestly can't express my gratitude for what you've done for all of us, because you really are changing the world. So you're both incredibly inspirational, and we were all very, very grateful. Thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen. And if you feel inspired, please do share with your friends and family. This helps us spread the word and also helps me encourage some exciting new guests to take part in this podcast. And above all, stay curious and stay free.